be willing to let people come in and work together on designing curriculum, designing assessments, and understand that aspect of collaboration is going to make your school stronger.
Well, welcome to Season 3 of Future Ready's Leading Through Unprecedented Times. I'm Tom Murray, your host, and I am so fired up to start off Season 3 with this episode that you're about to hear right now. We've got two guests with us today. We have Ryan Roseberry, a 7th grade humanities teacher and department chair, and Christine Childress, his colleague, who's an academic intervention specialist. They are from Reed Union School District in California. And what a topic we've got coming your way. Can you do some quick introductions for the audience, Ryan, and then Christine?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Ryan Roseberry. I am the teacher and humanities chair at Del Mar Middle School. I'm a national board certified teacher, and this is my 8th year at Del Mar Middle School. I'm excited to talk about the journey we've been through and some of the things that Christine has initiated over the past decade to lead us down this road.
Hi, I'm Christine Childress. I'm currently the academic intervention specialist. It's actually our first year with this role. I've been an English teacher for over 20 years, and this is my 10th year at Del Mar. So Ryan and I are excited to share with you today.
Great. Well, thanks for both being here. Let's take a moment. Obviously, this year has been unlike anything else ever for any educator on the planet. Reflect, if you would, and Ryan, let's start with you, just on the school year, teaching and learning in the pandemic. Talk to us a little bit about kind of some lessons learned, and then Christine, we'll go back over to you.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest lessons learned, I would say, was flexibility. Understanding that as we shifted from distance learning to hybrid learning to different modes of distance learning and incorporating more kids on campus, how were we as teachers, as a staff, as a district, able to accommodate the needs of different students, different grade levels of students, and really address the needs of these students, and at the same time provide a curriculum that was engaging, even if different than in any other previous year that we had taught, and be able to continually adjust this curriculum and continually find new ways to use standards-based grading and to use our grading system, ALMA, to provide feedback to students and parents as we move forward through an unprecedented year.
Christine, how about you? Some lessons learned on your end?
Lessons learned, especially trying to help students with their academic achievements in distance learning, has been challenging for teachers and specialists. But we've been learning how to be more creative, how to access students and to communicate with families in ways that we haven't before. And I'm excited, actually, once we get out of the pandemic, to be able to use those tools more. We're finding creative ways to have conversations with students about their habits of learning and also their content standards in a way that we haven't in the past. And we really are hoping to look forward.
So we've got a hot topic today, my friends. It's one, if you are an educator, I guarantee you're going to be passionate about. We're going to take a look at the way that Christine and Ryan are really changing what they've been doing related to a more standards-based approach. Now, we ask a lot of educators across the country, and they say, yeah, we're doing a standards-based approach. The moment we start talking about grading and secondary and something other than a 100-point scale, A through F, valedictorian and all those pieces, the moment it becomes contested or a hot topic. And I'm bringing you here some of those folks that are doing the work in incredible ways. So Christine, talk to us about your journey related to being more standards-based, because one of the things I can tell you that I've heard from educators throughout the pandemic is that, if we had a more competency-based or mastery-based approach, teaching remotely or asynchronously, we would have been much more prepared to do what we're doing here. And you all have been doing it. So talk to us about your journey to become more standards-based, whether it's through grading or the teaching and learning side. Christine, start us off there, if you would.
Yeah, both Ryan and I came from schools that had explored standards-based learning. And when we had come to Del Mar, we noticed they hyper-focused on points and achievement. And it was actually bringing a lot of anxiety to students, and it was actually kind of separating some students as well from their growth, especially students who special education, EL, and socioeconomically disadvantaged students. So in the last 5, 7 years, we've been trying to find ways in which to open up how we grade and how we teach and how we are giving feedback to our students. So they're are all moving towards a growth mindset. One of the biggest changes was our previous grading system was a very traditional system. You couldn't do anything else. But when our district adopted ALMA, it did have the capabilities of a standards-based grade book. So we were able to, on my 8th grade humanities team when I taught English, we were able at the same time of doing a traditional grading scale to start to experiment with a standards-based grading one. And kind of looking forward now, when I look at a student's report card from English, I don't see like a D grade. I see a separation of their habits of learning, how well they've been turning in work, and then I see their skill set. So I'm actually provided more information now for me to do my job as an intervention specialist.
Yeah, you know, I still think of the class where I didn't bring the tissues in for the bonus point, so I got the B plus instead of the A minus, right? And we all have stories like that where we can really think about those types of things where, you know, it was really more about the extra stuff or the bonus points, and it really wasn't a measure at the end of the day of what students knew and were able to do. But Ryan, jumping over to you, but secondary, because I know many elementary schools, if not most, have really gone more standards-based in the early years. But all the yeah buts when it comes to secondary, especially your middle schools, your high schools, yeah, but what about colleges? Yeah, but valedictorian. Yeah, but the class rank. Yeah, but like, what do you mean you want them to be able to redo or retake things? What do you mean participation doesn't count in the way it used to? All those yeah, buts. Talk to us if you would, especially at the secondary level, why a standards-based approach to teaching and learning is really important.
You know, I think some trends over the last decade to half decade that we saw in our area. One was, I know Christine and I and some other teachers went to Stanford and partnered with Challenge Success and really looked at when you have some of these top level students or driven students who are really applying themselves, even at the middle school level and at the high school level, to get into top universities, to push themselves for, you know, the highest GPA, to be in the most AP classes. This workload and this drive can be overwhelming, right? And so Challenge Success really looked at how can we challenge this idea of what it means to succeed in the classroom by looking at things like standards-based grading or giving meaningful homework or reducing the workload of some things so that students can focus on these thematic units or journeys that take them through secondary learning. And on top of that, as we moved through that, I think with Christine, Anthony Armstrong, and Ryan Sonneville, this 8th grade humanities team, they really took up the mantle here at Del Mar, and they were willing to, as Christine alluded to, pilot the standards-based grading system, come up with a set of power standards that they agreed on to measure students' growth throughout the year and run concurrent grade books. I, as a 7th grade teacher at that point, the year after, saw what they were doing and realized, you know, this is something that will revolutionize this learning community we have, because of the feedback that they could provide these driven students over the course of trimesters or for each assignment, that you're at this level, here's the specific skill that you could work on, and there's the opportunity for continued growth throughout the year. And I think the feedback, the way that Christine and Anthony and Ryan were able to design rubrics and implement feedback that showed students area of growth and really targeted that, it started to really switch that mindset and push the mindset of the whole learning community towards one of students seeking ways to grow and improve, as opposed to, as you mentioned earlier, students seeking the A, which was not what we were looking for. And I think high schools or secondary schools across the nation would realize, you know, the pressure of having these students who are simply driven by a GPA almost negates the whole idea of a growth mindset that standards-based grading can help foster.
Yeah, no less. It's I'm going to take this teacher versus this teacher because I know that teacher will be a lot easier to get the A than this teacher over here. Mm-hmm. And so students learn very quickly in traditional systems to game the system to figure out what they need to do, as opposed to the focus on learning. Christine, back over to you. Let's talk about collaboration and what you all call calibration, how it worked, some success, some challenges, especially during your piloting phase with all this.
Yeah, with my piloting phase in eighth grade with Anthony and Ryan, we really exposed ourselves as teachers. We collaborated every single day. There were text messages going on morning, noon, and night as ways to have these conversations because they're hard conversations. You are really opening up your curriculum and having like a conversation about whether or not your curriculum is addressing the standard. Is your curriculum just a fun project, or is your curriculum actually building student skills? So we would throw up every single project we had done and we would dissect those and see whether or not they were achieving our goals for writing, reading, and historical thinking. And sometimes there were just some knockdown, drag out fights, trying to decide whether or not this fit into our scope and sequence. But I think our ability to get through the examination part then allowed us to calibrate. Well, because with standards-based grading, you have a series of proficiency scales. You don't have numbers and you don't have percentages. So knowing what your proficiency scales are that are represented in a rubric, it's necessary that all three of us were on the same page when we're looking at an assessment to say, this would be an approaching standards, that we weren't deviating from each other, because that was part of keeping the integrity of the standards-based grading system, that we were all on the same page. The entire eighth grade class had all three of us. So they knew as we were going through this piloting phase and they're trying to figure out why they're not getting, B pluses or C minuses, that we were able to have those conversations, and being able to anchor those with student models allowed us to be on the same page.
Yeah, and that's true collaboration. Students aren't just getting the best from one person, it's from the best of all three people. And I've often said we've got to get to the point where we care as much about the kids across the hall as we do about our own. And I love that notion of calibration and really looking at that best practice instructionally of making sure our lenses align. Are we, if we're truly saying that when we assess students and give them some sort of grade, whether it be summative, formative, what it looks like, am I similar to the person across the hall? Are we seeing and looking for the same types of things? And that calibration is certainly a great aspect of it from a growth from a teacher end. But the other thing I would say is it takes vulnerability, as you were just describing, to maybe put something up there and your colleagues say, you know what, it doesn't really look like the standards we're looking for. And that trust and that culture are certainly really important aspects of all of this. But that calibration and collaboration, when we do that, kids really do win. Ryan, let's go back over to you for a minute. As a teacher of humanities, talk to us about the benefits of using the standards-based grading to communicate progress, maybe with students themselves or with parents.
Yeah, I think referring back to what Christine said when she, Anthony, and Ryan created this standards-based system, they created something that could be replicated. And I think that was something that was key for the rest of the staff, or key for other teachers to see, is because they made themselves vulnerable. Other humanities teachers, the humanities department could see, okay, they've taken the entire year, like Christine said, to meet continuously to calibrate their curriculum so that, the assignments or the assessments that are being measured, these formative or summative assessments, are assessments that truly capture the power standards that Christine, Ryan, and Anthony had chosen. So I think in humanities, it really gave us this context that was new, that a lot of teachers had not considered before, because you have this skill set that's repeated in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, but enhanced with difficulty, with students' ability to really analyze historical or literary text, and based on that ability to analyze, and to measure their proficiency across a range of assessments. Is it a writing assessment? Is it a research assessment? Is it a speaking assessment? Is it a debating assessment? And based on the specific skills that as humanities teachers, we're looking for students to show or demonstrate on a specific type of analysis, we can then measure over the course of a trimester, you've had multiple formative attempts to practice or to represent this skill. You've shown growth. This is phenomenal. The feedback that you can give a student when across a curriculum, across an entire department, you have rubrics that are calibrated. So the 6th grade informative rubric is similar to the 7th grade, which builds and is similar to the 8th grade. You get a growth journey for students that, like Christine said, when all 8th grade students had those 3 teachers, that enabled all 8th grade students to see, hey, this is something that we have buy-in for. These teachers are committed to providing us with this feedback. And I think as that spread to the other grade level teams, humanities teachers were able to see if you can create this enclosed system where teachers are providing the same structure, similar rubrics, feedback that uses the same language, as a child progresses throughout the multiple grades of a middle school or a high school, they can see this systematic approach where everyone is willing to kind of step back from the teacher being a sage on the stage to this more facilitative, collaborative approach where teachers are willing to say there's a greater purpose here, and that purpose is to really help kids see ways to grow and give them the feedback they need to achieve that.
Yeah, so well said. And Christine, in your role as an academic intervention specialist, talk to us from your lens what you see is some of the benefits for students for SBG.
Now that we're in our second full year, the entire staff is doing standards-based grading. We have a full overhaul of report cards. It gives me so much more information when I'm working one-on-one with students. I have both classes that are strategies classes where I have groups of students, but I also work with students individually. And I use those documents constantly because it's not just, especially for a middle school student, building confidence is important in order to encourage them to grow in those areas where they need to make adjustments. So I actually use those report cards to say, hey, look at this. You're doing a really great job with narrative writing in your English class. But I do see that we need to work a little bit on analyzing a text. I would never get that type of information from a traditional report card. It gives me an opportunity to build relationships with students and get them to be able to see their areas of strength as well as their areas of growth. And that gives me a little bit more leverage in kind of moving their barometer of growth when we're working either in a class setting or an individualized setting. So I'm really looking forward, as this is my first year in this position, since it's the first year it's been created, since I'm going to be having 2-3 years of data for next year's group, I'm going to be able to see trends for students over time. And that's going to not only give me an opportunity to work with students, but it also works as well with how we continue our professional development of our teachers. How do they start to learn how to leverage that information, not just as reporting out to how a student's doing, but also that they can start be making interventions and differentiate in their curriculum for students.
Yeah, the specificity and feedback there, we know from a best practice end, is really a key to growth. I mean, gone are the days of just writing good job on the top of a paper, putting a check mark on the top of a paper, on a report card, putting in an 87 without, well, what 13% of the content don't they know or haven't they mastered? And nobody can answer that, right? And the specificity and the feedback here is really what's key. I think back to the district that I was in, and we had gone full standards-based grading K to 12. And certainly I joke that I have the scars to show it when it comes to that. But the things we're able to then do for kids, like I think about, for instance, summer school. Like, honestly, if we're real, think about what a joke summer school is traditionally. Like, a child didn't master things in a full year. So we're going to give you like 4 weeks to do Geometry 101. Here we go again. Like, all right, open up to page 1. Like, what does that really look like, right? As opposed to, we were able to shift summer school to be fully mastery based. So we would say to students, well, you only need to master these 2 final standards and you're good. And maybe it only took a couple weeks, or maybe you need to master more, which then showed I'm there until I master these pieces, not just, well, I didn't bring in the tissue, so I didn't get the extra points. So I didn't get the 64.5. So it didn't round up. So now I have to be here. Right. And so that was just another example of benefiting students as they were able to connect. Like, I need to master it. That's my why, my purpose from a learning end, not just the I didn't do something well on the point scale, on that 0 to 100 scale. And I would recommend Rick Wormley, Ken O'Connor, Tom Gusky as great resources there if your district's looking at it there as well. So let's vision out in our last few moments here. Ryan, talk to us about where do you see this 3, 4, 5 years down the road? What do you see as possible with students moving forward?
Yeah, right now I see the ability we have, like this synchronicity with Alma being able to provide this narrative of students' progress over the course of the year. And then with this standards-based grading system that we've adopted, that Christine and Ryan and Anthony helped build, that as teachers become more aware and capable of using standards-based grading to use the software in Alma and really specifically target a skill a student needs to master within a trimester, that teachers themselves can become experts in interpreting the data and using the data to best meet the needs of students. And I think that's something that we're in the formative stages are now. We have people at different levels because they've some of us have been implementing standards-based grades for more years than others on campus, but moving forward that we have a majority of the campus where teachers are able to use that feedback purposefully, and they feel confident doing that because that will be reflected in the way that students receive the feedback and in the way that parents within the community look at teachers as being able to best utilize this information and really help our students grow.
Yeah, Ryan, and you've mentioned Alma a few times. If you're a listener, you can check out getalma.com if you want to take a look at what they've been referring to there in regards to making all of this work on their back end there as well. Christine, let me start to wrap up with one final question for each of you. I'm guessing there's lots of listeners. We get thousands of listeners for these podcasts that are thinking like, I would love to go standards-based at our middle school or our high school, and all the yeah buts start to come through. No matter where they are on that journey, give us one piece of advice, whether it's a superintendent or a teacher, for on their journey. What's one piece of advice that you have for them, Christine?
I would say stay the course, because it has been the most beneficial development for me as an educator in my entire 20 plus years. I've been able to be more reflective. I've been able to adjust in a way that I've never done before, but that's because of this framework and how it really has us examine our instructional practices and our curriculum design. And also, you're going to get benefits from the kids. The kids start to understand, and when they can start to talk to you about their own areas of strength and growth, you're like, this is what learning is supposed to be about. These are the conversations I want to be having with students. So stay the course. It is worth it.
And Ryan, same question, piece of advice, over to you.
My advice would be almost holistically have an open door policy, whether it's through collaboration with faculty, with admin. Be willing to let people come in and work together on designing curriculum, designing assessments, and understand that aspect of collaboration is going to make your school stronger. You have an open door and you're willing to show people, here's how I plan, here's what I'm doing. Let's work together. Let's go on this journey together. You're going to be stronger, and the benefit is going to be, as Christine said, immeasurable.
Ryan and Christine, you are incredible educators. I would put my own babies in your school and your classrooms in a heartbeat. Thanks for joining us today. And thanks for joining the first episode, my friends, of season 3 of Leading Through Unprecedented Times. Have a great week.
Thank you so much, Tom.